Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. What if someone from the bottom touched the top and didn't let go? Let us know in the comments section below. Diana Salter was not supposed to be in the front row. She was supposed to be invisible, just like always. But when she saw the polished black piano sitting beneath a glowing chandelier, she forgot every rule her mama ever taught her about staying in her lane. She was 14, skin the color of rich mahogany, and eyes that always seemed to be searching for the next way out. The loose strands of her braids tickled her cheeks as she craned her neck to see the piano up close. She had only seen one like that in books or movies, never in real life, not where she was from. The biggest keyboard she ever touched was missing 3 keys and wheezed like a smoker every time she tried to play anything that wasn't gospel. Till she played. She played at the dusty community rec center off Magnolia Street, the one with paint chipping off the walls and a vending machine that ate your quarters without apology. Mr. Darnell, the janitor with the creaky knees and soft heart, always left the room open for her late in the evenings. "You got magic in those fingers," he said once, sipping sweet tea and watching her coax life out of dead plastic keys. But here, in this grand auditorium of the Whitmore Academy, this was a different kind of magic. Diana had no business being there. Her school, Roosevelt Middle, was part of a pilot program, Community Arts Exchange. Some polished-up name meant to slap 2 worlds together and pretend they'd get along. Her principal picked her and 5 others, more for their good behavior than their actual talent. They were the silent, polite kind, the kids who wouldn't embarrass the school. Diana wasn't even supposed to be on this trip. Her mama nearly yanked the permission slip off the kitchen table when she saw the name of the school. "Whitmore?" she'd said, shaking her head. "That's that place where the rich folks go. What you gonna learn up there besides how they don't see you?" But Deanna convinced her. She wanted to see for herself. She had to. Now here she was. The auditorium smelled like lemon polish and old money. The students from Whitmore were already seated in clusters, wearing pressed uniforms and soft, bored expressions. Some of them glanced over at the Roosevelt group with barely hidden smirks. Deanna didn't care about any of them. She only cared about the piano. It sat at the edge of the stage, untouched, almost glowing under the lights. Her fingers twitched. She stepped closer, barely hearing the teacher's voice behind her, giving instructions about not touching anything. That was when she heard him. "You know that's not a toy, right?" She turned. A boy stood just off the aisle, hands in his pockets, eyebrows arched with amusement. It was all sharp angles and smug posture, the kind of confidence that didn't need to be earned because it came with his last name. Blonde hair too neat, shoes too clean, eyes too blue. Landon Whitmore. She didn't know him yet, but the name would matter later. He stepped down the aisle like the floor belonged to him. "That's a Fazioli," he said, voice loud enough for his friends to hear. "It cost more than your house, probably your entire block." The laughter came in waves, soft and poisonous. Diana didn't flinch. She just looked at him. Then at the piano. "I wasn't gonna steal it," she said. Landon tilted his head, a grin forming like he was letting her off easy. "I'm just saying, it's not really for beginners." She ignored him and looked back at the keys. They were like clean snow, untouched. Her fingers itched. "I know what I'm doing," she said, quieter now, like saying it too loud would break the spell. "You do?" He stepped closer. "So play." She blinked. "You're giving me permission?" He shrugged. "Sure. Let's see what Roosevelt's finest has to offer." And just like that, the world shrank. The auditorium, the lights, the whispers, all of it fell away. Her legs moved before her doubt could stop them. She sat on the bench. Her fingers hovered. She didn't play the loud stuff first. No showing off, just a whisper. A melody from home, something simple, something sacred. It was a lullaby her grandmother used to hum, a tune with no real name, just memory. One note, then another. A hush fell over the auditorium. Even Landon's grin faded. Her fingers danced like she was born with rhythm in her bones. The music curled out of the keys, filled the space, and wrapped itself around every heart in the room, whether they wanted it or not. When she finished, her hands rested on the keys a moment longer, like she wasn't ready to let go. Silence. Then a clap. One. It more. It spread like wildfire. But Diana didn't turn to look. Her eyes were locked on the keys. She finally stood, hands by her side, her face unreadable. Landon looked at her like he was seeing something he didn't expect, maybe even something he couldn't explain. "You never played on one of these before?" he asked. Nope. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Behind her, the Whitmore teacher, the same one who told them not to touch anything, was whispering something to Miss Allen from Roosevelt. Their eyes flicked to Diana. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel small. She felt seen, not for what she looked like, not for where she came from, for what she made. And she wasn't done yet. The smell of the auditorium was different now, like the air had shifted and no one knew how to breathe it. Diana stood in the wings, the heavy velvet curtains brushing her arm as she waited. She had been ushered off the stage almost as soon as she finished playing, like someone who'd touched something they weren't supposed to, but left fingerprints too beautiful to wipe away. Behind her she heard the teachers murmuring. Miss Allen's voice was sharp, slicing through the huddle of adults. "We need to give her another opportunity. She's got something. Raw, but real." "She wasn't even supposed to touch the piano," hissed one of the Whitmore teachers, a woman with tight curls and tighter lips. "That didn't stop her from making everyone in this room pay attention," Miss Allen shot back. Diana pretended not to hear them, pretended her heart wasn't thudding so hard it made her fingers tremble. She closed her eyes, breathing in slow and deep. She could still feel the keys under her skin. Smooth, heavy, alive. A shuffle of expensive shoes approached her. "You're Deanna, right?" The woman had a clipboard and a manicured smile. Her hair was so perfectly in place it looked sprayed there. "I'm Ms. Cameron, director of the Whitmore Arts Initiative." That was quite a performance. Diana nodded, not trusting her mouth to form words yet. Miss Cameron bent slightly at the waist, as if speaking to a much younger child. "Tell me, darling, where did you learn to play like that?" Diana shrugged. "Nowhere. I just played." Mrs. Cameron's smile tightened, like she didn't know what to do with that answer. She straightened her blazer with a quick flick of her wrists. "Well," she said, voice too bright, "it's clear you have untapped potential." Behind her, Landon leaned casually against the wall, arms folded, watching everything. When Diana's eyes flicked toward him, he just smirked and gave a tiny, mocking salute with 2 fingers off his forehead, like he knew he had started something he couldn't control now. Ms. Cameron continued. "There's a summer program we run, exclusive, very competitive. I think you should apply. In fact, I'll personally recommend you." Diana's mouth opened, but before she could speak, Ms. Allen swooped in. "We'll talk it over with her mother," she said firmly, one hand on Diana's shoulder. "Thank you, Miss Cameron." The clipboard woman hesitated, then clicked away down the hallway, leaving a trail of expensive perfume. Mrs. Allen bent down slightly so her face was level with Diana's. "You okay?" she asked, softer now. Diana nodded, still feeling like she was walking through a dream she didn't trust, yet. "She's offering you something big, kiddo, real big. You sure you're ready for that kind of spotlight?" Diana thought about it. Thought about the long bus rides, the rec center keyboard with duct tape on the side, the way her mama counted every penny twice before letting anything extra in the grocery cart. "Oh, I don't know," she said honestly. Mrs. Allen smiled. "That's a good answer. Means you're thinking." She gave Diana's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Let's get you back with the group." As they walked back into the main hall, Diana could feel the stares. It was different from before. Before, she was just another brown face in the crowd. Now she was the girl who played the rich boy's piano like she had every right to. Some faces were curious. Some were impressed. Some, like Landon's friends, were not so generous. "Bet she practiced that one song over and over just to show off," one boy muttered loudly enough for her to hear. "Yay!" another snickered. One-trick pony. Diana kept her head high, refusing to let their words stick to her skin. She had survived worse than playground taunts wrapped in silk ties. Still, it stung. The bus ride back to Roosevelt Middle was quiet. Everyone seemed to be processing the day in their own way. Diana sat by the window, forehead pressed against the cool glass, watching the neat rows of Whitmore's manicured hedges fade into cracked sidewalks and corner stores. When they pulled into the Roosevelt parking lot, the sun was setting in a blaze of orange. Ms. Allen stood at the front of the bus, clearing her throat. "Before we go," she said, "I want everyone to give Diana a round of applause." There was a pause, awkward and heavy. Then, one of the girls from Roosevelt started clapping. Then another. Soon the whole bus joined in, the sound rough but real. Diana didn't turn around. She just nodded once, her cheeks burning. Outside, her mama's old Pontiac was waiting. The car coughed a little smoke as it idled, a stubborn old beast that refused to quit. Diana slung her backpack over one shoulder and trudged toward it. Her mama leaned out the window. "You touch that piano?" Diana paused. "Yeah," she said finally. Her mama's eyes narrowed. "They say anything?" Like clap. A beat. Then her mama smiled. A real, proud smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Well, guess it's a good thing you didn't listen to me for once." Diana laughed, the sound breaking free like a song too big to be trapped. She climbed into the car, the door creaking as it closed. As they pulled away from the school, the last light of the day painting the cracked streets gold, Diana allowed herself to dream, just a little. Maybe, just maybe, this was only the beginning. The next morning, Diana sat at the kitchen table, a chipped corner scratching the side of her notebook as she tried to finish her homework. Her algebra problems stared back at her like riddles, meant for somebody else. She tapped her pencil against her notebook, but her mind kept slipping back to the piano. The way it sounded, the way it felt under her hands like it had been waiting just for her. Her mother, Denise Salter, stood at the counter pouring coffee into a cracked mug, the same one she used every morning. She was still in her work uniform, dark blue with the words Birmingham General Custodial Staff stitched over the breast pocket. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains, painting everything in a tired gold. "You think you want to do it?" her mama asked without turning around. Diana looked up from her notebook. "Do what?" "Applied to that fancy summer program." Diana hesitated. The idea of it buzzed in her chest, thrilling and terrifying all at once. She hadn't even dared to imagine it yesterday. It felt too big, too far away. Something for other people. "I dunno," she muttered, twirling her pencil. Her mother finally turned, resting her hip against the counter, mug in hand. "You scared?" Diana shrugged. "Maybe. What if I'm not good enough?" Denise took a sip of her coffee and stared at her daughter over the rim of the cup. "Baby, scared is fine. Scared means it matters. But don't you ever talk yourself out of something before you even try." Diana bit her lip. She didn't want to say it out loud, but deep down she worried about more than just failing. She worried about not fitting in, about being the girl with the wrong clothes, the wrong background, the wrong everything. Denise must have read the hesitation on her face, because she set the mug down and crossed the kitchen. She crouched so she was eye level with Deanna. You got the same blood as anybody else in that fancy school. Your people built things with nothing but their bare hands. Music's in your bones, girl. It's your right. Diana blinked fast to keep her vision clear. She whispered. Her mother smiled, pressed a kiss to her forehead, and stood up. That's my girl. Later that day at school, Diana found herself called into Miss Allen's office. The secretary gave her a weird look when she walked past the desk, like she didn't know what a Roosevelt kid had any business doing getting special treatment. Miss Allen was waiting inside, papers spread out across her desk. Close the door, Diana, she said. Diana did, heart thudding in her ears. Marshall. Malum smiled and pushed a form across the desk. Application for the Whitmore Summer Arts Program, she said. Mr. Cameron already wrote a letter of recommendation. You just need to fill this out, and we need a video submission. Diana swallowed. A video? Yes. Mrs. Allen tapped the form. They want to see you play again. Something of your choice. Deanna sat down slowly. Where am I supposed to record that? Miss Allen's smile grew. Funny you should ask. That Saturday, Diana found herself standing outside the old Roosevelt Theater, a relic from the days when their neighborhood had been proud and thriving. The marquee letters were half missing, and a family of pigeons had made a home in the crumbling rafters. But inside, in the dusty, dim light, stood a battered but still functional upright piano. Mr. Darnell was there too, pushing a broom across the stage, whistling under his breath. When he saw Diana, he leaned on the broom and grinned. Told you had magic, he said. She smiled back, nerves jangling in her stomach. Miss Allen set up her phone on a tripod, giving Diana a thumbs up. No pressure, she said. Just play like you did that day. Diana sat at the piano bench, her palms sweaty. She stared at the keys. For a second, she heard all the doubts again, whispering in her ears. You don't belong here. You'll mess it up. They'll laugh at you. She closed her eyes, and she remembered her mother's voice. Music's in your bones. Deanna took a deep breath. Silent she played. This time she chose something different, something fierce. She played a piece she had made up herself, a storm of sound that built and crashed and lifted, telling a story even without words. The piano groaned under her touch, the high notes trembling like birds ready to fly. When she finished, her hands were trembling. The theater was silent, except for the soft shuffle of pigeon wings high above. Miss Allen pressed stop on the recording, her mouth open slightly like she had forgotten how to speak for a second. Mr. Darnell whistled low and long. Lord have mercy, he said. You done lit this whole building on fire. Deanna smiled shyly, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. Mrs. Allen walked over and squeezed her shoulder. I'll send it in today, no matter what happens, Diana. You did something powerful. Diana nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She spent the next week in a daze, flipping between hope and dread so fast it made her dizzy. Every time her phone buzzed, every time the house phone rang, she jumped. And then finally, it came. Miss Allen found her in the hallway after fourth period, her face glowing with excitement. You're in, she whispered, pressing a letter into Deanna's hand. Full scholarship. Diana stared at the envelope. It felt heavy in her hand, like it was carrying her whole future inside. You earned this, Miss Allen said. Don't ever forget that. Diana could barely remember walking home that day. She clutched the letter to her chest, her steps light as air. Her mother cried when she read it, pulling Diana into a tight hug and laughing through her tears. That night, Diana sat on her bed, the letter spread out in front of her. She traced the words with her fingertip. Accepted. Full scholarship. Summer Arts Program. Her heart ached with how big it felt. bigger than the rec center, bigger than Roosevelt, bigger than all the smallness she had been taught to believe about herself. She wasn't just a visitor anymore. She was becoming someone new, someone unstoppable. And somewhere deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of the song. Would you like me to continue with Act 2, Section 2, where the final climatic and uplifting conclusion happens? He said, proceed with the full script of Act 2, Section 2. It should have a minimum of 1050 words. Make sure this is the final part of the script and the final chapter of the story with a happy ending. There should be no titles inside the script. Just make the narration straight. But there should be the act number, section number, and title above the script. ChatGPT said, of course. Here is the grand final section, exactly as you asked. Act 2, Section 2, when the music fights back. The first day of the summer program smelled like fresh varnish and expensive paper. Diana clutched her worn backpack tighter against her chest as she walked into the Whitmore Academy Music Conservatory. The building towered above her, glass and steel shining in the hot sun, a fortress for the privileged and the prepared. She wasn't either, but she was here. She had earned her place. Inside, students bustled through the lobby, some carrying violin cases, others holding sheet music marked up with notes Diana couldn't even begin to read. Everyone looked polished, groomed, like they belonged in a magazine spread about prodigies and perfection. Diana tugged at the hem of her thrift store jeans and tried to steady the thundering in her chest. A woman with a tight bun and sharp glasses clipped across the floor, checking names off a clipboard. When she got to Diana, she hesitated, eyes scanning her up and down in a blink-and-you-miss-it kind of way. Practice rooms are down the hall, she said, already moving to the next student. Orientation starts in 20 minutes. Diana nodded and slipped away before the woman could ask any questions she didn't want to answer. The hallway stretched endlessly, doors lined up like soldiers on either side. From behind some doors floated snatches of music, piano scales, a violin's bright wail, the steady beat of a metronome. Diana found an empty room, slipped inside, and closed the door behind her. It was tiny, barely enough space for the piano and a rickety chair, but to Diana it might as well have been a castle. She ran her hand across the keys. Smooth, cool, familiar. Her heart slowed. She sat down and started to play. Not the songs the others probably practiced, the complicated, show-off pieces. She played the songs that grew up inside her, songs that sounded like Birmingham streets after the rain, songs that felt like Mama's voice humming in the kitchen, songs that had no sheet music because they were stitched from memory and stubbornness and dreams too loud to ignore. She didn't hear the door open. She didn't notice anyone standing there until the song finished and she looked up, startled. It was Landon. He leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, a smirk playing on his lips, just like before. But something was different in his eyes now. Not mockery. Something closer to curiosity. You know, you're not supposed to be using the rooms yet, he said lightly. Diana stood up quickly, nerves sparking in her gut. Sorry, she mumbled. I'll go. He shook his head. No, I mean, you sound good. She froze, not sure if he was joking or setting a trap. I'm serious, he said, his smirk fading. That, whatever you were playing, it's real. She blinked at him, thrown off balance. Most of us here, he went on, stepping fully into the room, we can play. We can do scales and sonatas and whatever, but you sound like you're telling a story. Diana didn't know what to say. Compliments were like foreign currency to her. She didn't know how to spend them without getting scammed. Thanks, she said finally. Landon shrugged. Just don't get used to it. Competition's still fierce. He flashed a grin, but it didn't sting the way it used to. It was almost friendly. As he walked away down the hall, Diana sat back down at the piano. Maybe, just maybe, even here, she could make a space that was hers. Orientation was a whirlwind. They were assigned mentors, given schedules packed tighter than a preacher's Sunday sermon, and warned that only the top performers would get to showcase at the final recital. The recital was a big deal. Local reporters, music scouts, college representatives. A chance to change your life. Don't estimate Diana circled the date in her notebook twice. July the 28th. Game day. Weeks passed in a blur of sweat and music. Diana practiced until her fingers ached. She stayed late after classes, sneaking into whatever practice room she could find. She soaked in everything, the theory classes, the master workshops, the critiques that sliced deep but made her sharper. She found a rhythm. Some students ignored her, some whispered behind her back, but a few, like Mia, a violinist from Atlanta, and Gabrielle, a drummer from New Orleans, found her. They practiced together in dusty corners, laughing at their mistakes, daring each other to try harder, reach higher. For the first time, Diana wasn't just surviving. She was growing. Then came the announcement. Only 10 students would perform at the recital. Nerves chewed through her as the names were called out in the auditorium. Each syllable felt like a drumbeat in her chest. When they got to number 9 and she still hadn't heard her name, her hands went cold. And finally, said the director, scanning the list one more time, Diana Salter. For a moment she didn't move, didn't breathe. Mia elbowed her, grinning. Diana exhaled, the sound shaky and full of disbelief. She had made it. The night of the recital arrived faster than she thought possible. She stood backstage, the heavy curtain trembling with every heartbeat. From the wings, she could see the audience, a sea of suits and cameras and people who would decide things about her future without ever really knowing her story. She gripped the piano's edge, letting its steadiness anchor her. When they called her name, she walked out. No trembling, no hesitation. She sat down at the grand piano in the center of the stage. Bigger than any she had ever touched before. Bigger than her fears. She placed her fingers on the keys, and she played, not something borrowed, not something copied. She played her music. She played the nights spent practicing in an empty rec center, the afternoons when she thought nobody saw her, the mornings when her mother whispered prayers under her breath, thinking Diana couldn't hear. She played every ounce of herself into that hall, filling it so completely there was no room left for doubt. When the last note faded, the silence was deafening. Then came the applause. It rose like a tide, drowning out everything else. Real and roaring, and full of something that felt like more than just clapping hands. It felt like acceptance. Can't feel like home. As Diana stood and bowed, she caught a glimpse of her mother in the crowd, wiping her eyes but smiling so big it made Diana's own heart ache. And somewhere off to the side, Landon clapped too, his face unreadable, but no longer smirking. That night, under the heavy stars and the cooling summer air, Diana Salter stepped out of the shadow of who she had been. She didn't just belong. She had arrived, and this was only the first song of many.